make an interesting Group A, because then you'd have 3 teams tied at 1 and 2. You'd have a similar situation to what is going on over in Group B right now, and it does mean that the second round robin would be very, very exciting. But G2, they looked very inconsistent so far this Worlds. They had a dominant victory over Africa, they had a very one-sided loss against PVB, and now they're going up against the best team in the group.
Well, let's see how they go about doing it. First off, they're going to go ahead and ban Xayah. They looked at the stats put up by Betty last time, saying, this is one of the strongest champions in the game, and he knows how to play it really well. We better remove that. Good choice from G2 eSports. They're also going to take out Talia and Urgot, while Flash Wolves ban out the Alistar, and they pay respects to Hjärnan. You pay the G2 tax against G2, you ban the Dinger.
So what are they going to... Wow, instant first pick Akali. That is quite a bold move. Now, the big thing about Akali is in recent weeks, many teams have come up with strategies to counter it. We saw Schalke over in Europe having an answer to it. We've seen teams all across the world have an answer to it. And things like Lissandra, things like LeBlanc, heavy CC compositions have often been considered really strong answers to her. But the thing about G2 is they can flex her to both top and mid, depending on what matchup they get given.
And you can see the stats on your screen. She is banned in over half the games, picked in a few, and wins very little so far. That is actually one of the interesting things about a champion that's banned most of the time, is then when it does get picked, your players don't actually practice it that much because they just assume a ban, and sometimes it doesn't have the effect you would like. But it's going to be Xayah and Gragas picked up for the Flash Wolves. G2 locking in the Tahm Kench. These are just Yasuo teases back and forth. Don't get excited, Twitch chat.
But of course, it's the hover for the Rise episode, rather.
Right. You have to do it. You have to do it. You have to pay homage to the music video. It's very important, but
Jhin Tahm Kench in the bot lane for G2. This is definitely a comfort pick. Wadid, he was often put on Tahm Kench duty very regularly during the regular season, just because it can offer a safe bot side of the map. And Hjärnan Jhin is one of his best performing champions. It offers good wave clear, he performs well in team fights, and he was the guy that carried them in Game 4 versus Infinity with this champion.
Yeah, the Tahm Kench, Wadid's Tahm Kench in the series that they had to play to get out of play-ins, he was straight up 1v9 in some of those fights. Like, this man kept people going when it looked like they should not have been going any longer. I look forward to seeing him on the champion here again today. As Sion is locked in for the Flash Wolves, we know that can go into either solo lane. We'll see what they end up deciding to do with it, as in the second part of the bans, Olaf is ban number 1. They know that that is a comfort pick for Jankos.
Now remember that Maple has played a lot of Sion in mid, as we were talking about, that it is very flexible in where it can choose to go. But Flash Wolves have a very meaty frontline right now, and an AD carry that has really good self-peel. So you look at this Akali pick and you're wondering, how many targets do you have right now? It can be rather difficult, especially with things like Braum still up and available. There's more than enough peel available to make this Akali's life extremely difficult in the ensuing team fights.
And the interesting thing here is, with the Xayah banned away and with Xayah picked by the Flash Wolves, those two champions have so many more plays than anything else on AD carry during main stage Worlds so far. It's 14 for Xayah, 10 for Xayah. Third place is Varus at 4.
Yes.
That's significantly further down. So they're knocking G2 a step down on that tier list. As now with the bans completed, Lissandra and Rakan banned out by G2. Final ban for Flash Wolves is the Irelia that we've seen wreak so much havoc. Did manage to go beyond a 90% win rate with the Freak of Freaks finding themselves the win in the previous game. And it looks like Braum is the pick here for the Flash Wolves.
So we talked about the Braum, and now look at how much more of a front line the Flash Wolves have. Gragas disengage with the ultimate. You have the tanky Sion and the Braum. The fact that Xayah can self-peel. It's going to be really difficult for PerkZ or Wunder to find picks or assassinations with this Akali. But G2, they're just going for a full-on dive comp. They have the Nocturne in here. They have the potential Tahm Kench flank. They have the Akali dive. They're saying, let's just try and kill Betty.
Are they going to play Vayne mid?
Nah, dude, don't trust it. It's just the hovers.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to believe. It is going to be Camille locked in instead, likely seeing that one go into the top side there with the Akali in the mid lane.
But the thing is here for G2 is they're kind of picking the Camille as a form of answer to the Sion, but Sion can be put in both mid and top. Now, Flash Wolves may just go for a more standard counterpick to the Akali, which is often considered to be the Galio, but blind picking this Camille could be dangerous.
You now have a bunch of divers and people who strictly want to kill the AD carry
Yep.
versus a comp that I would like to now dub Betty and Meatballs.
Betty and Meatballs.
Because all of these dudes are going to be just this impenetrable fortress protecting this AD carry.
It's so good from the side of Flash Wolves how they saw the very early Akali and have said, oh, you want to kill us? No, 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 no. Galio, Gragas, Sion, Braum. Good luck getting through that. The Afrika Freaks tried to, and they failed. And a large part of that was because they were not active enough in the early game. And that is where our attention turns to Jankos.
Yes,
the man
sir.
that has been inconsistent so far in the group stages of Worlds. He has to get G2 ahead in the early game, either in the mid lane or in the top lane, ideally in both, if G2 want to stand a chance against this juggernaut of a composition that Flash Wolves have drafted for themselves.
I mean, the whole split has just seemed to be inconsistent for G2 throughout the regular season, then into the postseason, and now even into Worlds. We saw them have a bit of a shaky play-ins. They come into Worlds, they beat a Freak, everybody's like, no way, man, G2's back. This is the G2 everybody was hoping for. And then they lose to Fongbu Buffalo, and we're right back on the shaky train. The team has got to find that level of solid mental state and good play to make things happen. And I agree, I think so much of it is going to be on Jankos here to allow this team to get themselves going and get to a point where the dive can get through this wall that has been drafted by the Flash Wolves.
And here we go. Flash Wolves 2-0 in the group so far. With a win here, they cement their position at the top of the group with a 3-0, and they will force a three-way setup between the other three teams, between G2, Afrika, and PVB.
Want to point out a couple of things here real quick in terms of just the keystones and summoner spells. Wunder going Kleptomancy on the Camille, Hanabi going Glacial Augment on the Sion, and Teleport on Hjärnan as opposed to the two combat summoner spells on the side of the Flash Wolves. Of course, SwordArt having Guardian means he won't be able to trade that Ignite out for anything else, as Moojin says, all right, you want to hit me, I'll just have a dance. Gets kicked in the butt for his troubles. We're going to have more level 1 action here. SwordArt takes a couple hits there from PerkZ, gets himself away, and at least it's not just standing on the lines of scrimmage. Everybody's getting into a little bit of a tussle.
So, let's talk about some of these keystones. There's a Kleptomancy onto Wunder right now.
Yep.
You would imagine that he's not expecting to hard win the lane during the early stages because he doesn't have the wave clear that a Sion will have. So, in my head, his goal here is to just use the W and perhaps use the hook shot and every kind of small window that he has to just get a bit of poke down, get a bit of damage down, and just increase that gold generation. Because when you're going up against a tank, you're not expecting to lose the lane, but if you can get to those item spikes sooner, then maybe you can look to force fights. Maybe you can look for a couple more kills in the early stages. So I think that his choice of summoner spell is very much, let's just maximize our gold influx by utilizing the fact that Hanabi just wants to wave.
And you can see Hanabi already getting into it here in the top lane early on. The Sion, one of those guys that once he gets the defensive itemization going, it is very hard to deal with him. Bottom side, Betty and SwordArt, remember, these are the guys we're looking at to have those big performances for the side of the Flash Wolves. The last time Flash Wolves played when they took down the Afrika Freaks, Betty into that game 8-0-2, SwordArt 0-0-9. No deaths between them. SwordArt not even managing to accidentally take a kill.
And Betty has just been a fantastic player throughout the entirety of the year. Let's think back to MSI, when he wasn't even in the conversation for top 80 carries at the tournament. It was all about all the others from Korea, Europe, NA, China. It was Betty that was kind of left out. But then he came into that tournament and he exceeded all expectations. He was one of the best performing AD carries. He comes into the World Championship after a fantastic regular season, and this team just plays around him. We've seen so many ganks being thrown towards the bot side of the map. We've seen Sion roams from Maple. We've now got a Galio in this game. We've got a team composition built around this star AD carry from the LMS, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in this game because a strong performance from him once again could result in a 3-0 Flash Wolves in the first week of the group stages.
Almost feels like the second coming of Uzi, the way that sometimes RNG will go all in and just strictly and only play around him. Well, Flash Wolves are putting everything in the Betty basket this time around as PerkZ will shove in the mid lane there, has early control over that wave. And like you mentioned as we were loading into the game, when you've got a composition with champions like Nocturne, like Camille, like Akali, these snowbally, divey champions, you've got to get off to a good early game, because if Flash Wolves get ahead, if they're able to itemize defensively, there is no way the G2 composition is going to be able to deal with those. Jhin is not traditionally one of the AD carries that you think of as a tank buster.
True.
And I think that G2 is not set up to deal with this Flash Wolves composition from any sort of a measurable depth.
But what G2 do have is a strong 1-3-1. And if they're able to get this early lead, then they can split up the map. They can avoid the hard engage that Flash Wolves may try to force. And that's going to be what they look to play around. And again, we talked about it. It's going to come off the back of this jungler, Jankos, on the Nocturne. Level 6, he needs to make a gank happen. So that's what my eyes are on. Level 6, level 7. Will he go towards the mid lane? Will he go towards the top lane? He may even try to set up a play down bot. I'm not entirely sure where he invests his early pressure, but Jankos needs to be the guy that steps up for G2 in this game.
The thing is, Jankos is the one who had a bit of a fumble in the last time that we saw G2 play when they were going up against Fongu Buffalo. He's the one whose stats weren't quite where they need them to be. Mid lane, the play coming in, looking to find that kill onto PerkZ, who tries to get himself away with the Shroud. Maple continues down through the river, making sure he cuts off the escape route, and first blood goes over to Flash Wolves.
And it's Flash Wolves who find the early advantage. PerkZ can't even use any of his summoner spells. After Maple, he does a quick back to base, he TPs into lane, and they have so much AoE that they're able to kill PerkZ even inside his Shroud. Good early start from the Flash Wolves, getting ahead in the mid lane.
All right, let's take another look at how it happens here as PerkZ is about midway through the lane.
Yeah, and it's just a pretty standard stuff. They still have vision on him because of the taunt. That's going to land an auto on the Maple, giving him that small bit of vision. He can't afford to hide in the Shroud because it's about to run out, but now we see more action.
And we can't afford to watch the entirety of the replay as plays are happening on that bottom side of the map now. Wadid is the target. Maple looking to go in, flashing the taunt, damage coming through, chain CC, thick skin won't do it. Maple grabs the kill.
And pressure mid immediately rotated down to bot. This is classic Flash Wolves, investing resources into Betty, setting up to be the carry. 2 kills already on the board, and remember we said that it was G2 that needed to find that early lead, but Flash Wolves come up with a 500 gold lead 5 minutes into the game.
That feels good for Flash Wolves, man. Getting both the mid lane and the bottom lane going. It means the Galio is going to be strong enough to always be able to follow around if the Akali and the Nocturne try to set up a play on someone. The heroic entrance you'll always have to worry about. And I mean, the sooner Betty gets to level 6, the better off you are. Because if there's one thing assassins don't want to deal with, it's invulnerability frames. And Xayah going untargetable like that is a real thorn in their side.
It certainly is, Flowers. Flash Wolves looking fantastic so far. And G2's bot lane, they now have no summoner spells available to them. And what we've seen is that when teams are able to successfully shut this duo down, G2 often have a really tough time, and that's not to say that Hjärnan and Wadid have had a bad tournament. I actually think that overall, they've had a really solid World Championship so far, but teams love to camp them. Teams love to gank them. Teams love to put them behind, and that's just because typically G2 do not play around this lane. They don't try to camp for Hjärnan. They don't try to make him the carry, and that can sometimes leave them vulnerable to being shut down in the early game.
See Betty getting a good trade down onto Hjärnan there in the bottom lane. And I talked about Betty's performance against the Afrika Freaks. Here's some of the numbers. As you're going to see Jankos go in, looking to make the move onto that enemy jungler. Now finding a lot of damage onto Moojin, who goes over the wall, only to be picked up by PerkZ. Good job there from G2.
We don't have time to talk about Betty Flowers,
no,
but the
we
action
don't.
hasn't slowed down. Yes, Betty had a fantastic performance versus the Afrika Freaks, and he's having a good game so far. But Nocturne, level 6, Jankos finds the enemy jungler in the river, and he hands the kill over to PerkZ. The best way in which G2 can now start to come back into this game.
And you already said it. Nocturne is one of those champions. Whenever the ultimate is off cooldown, you want to see a play, and they make it happen immediately on the side of G2. Top side now. Wunder looking for the 1v1 here against Hanabi. Takes him down very low. Gets hit by the decimating smash. Hanabi still feeling comfortable enough in this fight. Pops himself with a shield, tries to go in and make a play, but can't quite find it. Wunder's fast enough on the flash out to keep himself safe.
Surprised that Wunder didn't try to outplay that. He does still have the ultimate available. He could have dodged some of those skills, but instead, he just chooses to back away. But now look at the roam from the Flash Wolves.
Flash Wolves collapsing 3-man middle towards PerkZ. He does have flash available. Maple wants to go in, can't quite find any sort of a CC, and it's not going to work.
So Flash Wolves still trying to be proactive in the early game. Moojin, 1-1-1 so far, been involved in all of the early playmaking. But that trade in the top side of the map, you know, in the early laning phase, Hanabi was actually really far behind, but now that he's got himself some armor, now that he's willing to trade back against Wunder and knows that he has the support from Maple's ultimate should he need it, he's really going at it against Wunder. And even though Wunder has some early items very quickly completed, it's not quite enough to trade against the Flash Wolves top lane.
And we've talked about how Betty's the hero of the side of the Flash Wolves, how this is the guy that they trust to carry, and the G2 bottom lane isn't normally front and center. But for G2, Wunder has been someone who has had some incredible performances so far in the top lane. From the play-in stage to the main stage, this guy has put in serious work for the side of G2. And if he gets ahead on this Camille, this isn't just a strong split-pushing champion versus a tank who can take advantage of the situation. This is a player specifically who has the skill to be able to seriously carry the game and make the calls and be in the right spot to turn this into a war.
Yeah, it was his split pushing in that Heimerdinger game that allowed G2 to play the map so well and kind of divide and conquer the Afrika Freaks. And he's going to be a big part of G2 trying to find a win in this game. But Flash Wolves, again, investing resources towards the bot side of the map. That control ward means that Moojin has not been spotted, but G2's bot showing respect. Both Flashes still unavailable, so they don't want to run the risk of overextending.
Probably aware that something
Look
could
at
be
Akali,
going on here.
Nocturne.
Wadid does go a little bit further forward, recognizing the fact that backup is available. Jankos with the paranoia can jump into the fight at a moment's notice. SwordArt and Betty still going to be hanging around here. Jankos has made his way into the lane. PerkZ is going to keep Maple occupied so he won't make a heroic entrance into that bottom side anytime soon. And PerkZ is getting to the point. Remember, once Akali hits level 9, has all 5 points into that queue, her wave clear becomes exceptionally stronger, and she's going to start being able to rotate a lot better.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about it during the laning phase, but the phase rush, a bit of an unconventional choice on the Akali, gives you a lot of extra movement speed. And remember that she's already pretty mobile, so to get that extra movement speed on top means that you have so much freedom to chase targets down, reposition in team fights, escape certain situations. And while it doesn't necessarily provide a lot in terms of damage, after the electrocute nerfs, clearly going for a different direction for PerkZ.
Hjärnan's down to about 1/3 HP, hanging around here to see if maybe they can bait Flash Wolves into a bad fight with Jankos being very near, but Flash Wolves recognize that. They're saying, hey, pretty sure the jungler was around here. We saw PerkZ leave lane as well. Not exactly a situation we want to put ourselves in. They're going to err on the side of caution there too. But honestly, Vedius, G2 is up to almost a 1,000 gold lead 11 minutes into this game, despite being down 1 kill. And you can see that the Kleptomancy on the Camille paying off in the top lane, getting him ahead in terms of gold. Jungle, it's a very slight advantage for Jankos on the Nocturne. Mid lane, very slight advantage for the Akali over the Galio. Bottom side, it's even. So G2 doing a good job so far in this early game.
Yeah, and it's just coming down to the individual lane talents of PerkZ and Wunder once again, where a lot of G2's early game leads often come from. But Flash Wolves, again, they don't have to find this early lead. The fact that things are even right now is great for them. Yeah. They just don't want Wunder and PerkZ to be ahead. And if they keep things the way they're going, then this mid-game, the opportunity for Flash Wolves to force these team fights is where their composition will truly shine, and where Flash Wolves as a team have shown their real strength so far in this group stage.
Flash Wolves moving into the enemy jungle, looking to grab that red buff away, take away some of the ganking power of Jankos there on the Nocturne. Moojin's first barrel actually missed the red buff as the leash wasn't quite that coordinated, but they'll still steal that buff away, no problem whatsoever, as we'll see SwordArt heading back into the bottom lane as Jankos is saying, all right, forget about it, we don't need that anyway, let's go for the Rift Herald.
Now, you can see Moojin is currently in the middle lane. The Galio ulti is up with the TP. There is a ward right behind Wunder that they need to respect, and interestingly, Jankos is just going to back away from this one. G2 don't feel confident in setting up this play. They're a little cautious of what the Flash Wolves are up to. And I think after seeing SwordArt roam up through the river, joining them in the mid lane, they thought, okay, they have an idea that we're starting this one off. They have 4 members, we only have 3, so let's just disengage. Let's not give them another early advantage.
And I like the reads from both teams so far, recognizing what the other side is up to, minimizing putting themselves in those situations that could potentially snowball the game the other way. Oftentimes you see teams, I always say there's 2 different ways to win a game of League of Legends. You either make the big play yourself or you wait for your opponents to do something stupid. Both teams are preventing themselves from doing something stupid so far, We're gonna see if that changes anytime soon, as Jankos walking himself towards that pixel brush does drop a ward down in time. Maple won't be able to find the collapse there. SwordArt and Betty moving around, trying to come down and take down that crab. SwordArt tries to go in for the flash into the glacial fissure, but won't do it. And the crab gets spit out into the jungle.
So that was multiple steps happening kind of all at once, where G2 gets spotted thanks to the vision that Flash Wolves had invested towards the bot side of the map. They saw him coming through the river, and they can see the Akali roaming down as well. Jankos also has his ultimate, so he felt safe moving into the river. He thought that Flash Wolves couldn't try and set anything up, but Maple was very subtly moving out of the mid lane, ready to throw his ultimate down towards the bot side of the map for a counter. And this is the thing that Jankos is also constantly thinking about. Where is Maple? Can he respond? Can he stop my ganks? And it's hard right now for Jankos. We saw one successful gank so far in the early game, but outside of that, he's just showing so much respect to the Flash Wolves mid laner that we're yet to see another play from him.
He's showing so much respect to their mid laner, and he's also on a lot of wards. There are plenty of wards being placed down in the bottom side of G2's jungle. A couple of them have expired recently, so it doesn't look as lit up as it previously was. But there were wards around his red buff, ward around his Krug camp. They're warding more deeply than they would normally need to because they're watching out for where he's pathing, preventing those paranoia ganks, preventing him from snowballing. One thing I also want to point out about Jankos, did buy that very early stopwatch on the Nocturne so he can make one of those big dives, go straight into the back line, and then protect himself from the follow-up damage and being immediately killed thereafter. Flash Wolves now, plenty of members towards this top side, still keeping an eye on Rift Herald.
So keep your eyes on the G2 base right now. Note that Hjärnan is actually making his way up towards the mid lane. The Rift Herald seems to be the play, as Betty, not entirely sure if he's gone back to base yet or if he's just returned from the laning phase, because G2 were looking like they wanted to use a numbers advantage to try and force the Rift Herald play. But instead, they're going to disengage. The vision is going to be cleared out by SwordArt and Moojin and Flash Wolves, kind of getting ahead of the curve, saying, all right, we can see what you're up to. We're going to be the ones to get priority on this vision before you can be the ones to force an objective.
And they might be getting priority over vision, but it's still G2 that has almost a 1,500 gold lead. You talked about how these solos were building leads for themselves, Vedius, but even in the jungle and in the bottom lane now, advantages are going the way of G2, which is impressive when we were talking about Betty being as good as he was. Now, granted, Frost did mention on the desk, Betty does have a pretty poor CSD. It is one of the elements that he falls behind in. He's not this big lane bully. He's more of a team fight 80 carry. That's where he shines. So we'll see if that reigns true as we get further and further towards the mid game. It is 16 minutes in now. Still no neutral objectives taken. Still no turrets taken. Honestly, there's not been any of those started up just yet until that Gragas barrel will aggro the Ocean Drake here. No 4-minute Drake this time around. A little bit slower, but Wadid placing the ward over the wall does see what the Flash Wolves are up to if G2 wants to fight for this.
Ooh, Wadid. He's going to take a bit of poke damage here from the Flash Wolves duo. I feel like G2 will just have to concede this Drake, but remember again, we want to backtrack to these win conditions of the two teams. G2, very solid 1-3-1. Ooh, a casualty in the bot lane.
Well, here we go, going right after the Braum. Not worried about the Xayah, recognizing she's able to get away. Jankos going into the stasis. SwordArt's going to be taken down. Hjärnan grabbing the first kill. Wadid trying to gobble up his jungler, keep him safe. Heroic entrance coming in. Flash Wolves can't find anybody in return. They've lost their support for nothing.
And G2 find themselves a pick with nothing going down towards the side of Flash Wolves. These are the kind of early game plays they need to make happen. SwordArt, he did not have his flash from the pick that he tried to find in the river. Remember when Jankos was kind of caught out in that river section after he'd been spotted out by all that vision, SwordArt made that flash play, but it didn't result in anything. And this means that from the darkness, Jankos was able to show up, and when they're combined CC, remember, Galio cannot ulti in this situation. The darkness does not allow him to arrive towards the bot side of the map unless he has direct vision of the Braum, which means that he arrives far too late. G2 are already on the disengage. Both top laners throw their TP out just for safety. But Flash Wolves, they lose another kill.
Well done by G2, making that one happen there and getting everybody else out okay. Top lane turret on the side of the Flash Wolves nearly taken down here. I believe that is the lowest health turret on the map right now. As PerkZ and Maple, you can see there in the mid lane, both level 12. PerkZ with the Gunblade completed. This item's always kind of an anomaly to me because it's not good on a majority of the champions in League of Legends, but the ones that it's good on, it is necessary on.
Really
Akali,
good.
Katarina, champions like that. it just makes the champion so much more effective once it's completed. And with PerkZ having that, it means that Betty does need to be protected at all times. If PerkZ has even a moment of exposure onto him, he can burst him down.
So G2 right now, in a pretty healthy gold lead. They've swapped the lanes up because they want to play towards Rift Herald. There's no Drake on the board. And they're the ones with full river control right now. They have lit up the top side of the map so that they're the ones that can constantly have that priority, force Flash Wolves to move into darkness and run the risk of getting picked off. But Jankos is actually on the bot side of the map. He does have his ulti, and he may have been looking for a pick onto Hanabi, but he isn't able to find it. Hanabi showing that respect, being very aware that Wunder right now has a lot of damage with both the Tiamat and the Trinity Force being completed.
Tiamat, Trinity Force has free boots as well from the Inspiration Mastery. Bottom side, here comes the dive. Nocturne going in. Jankos looking to make this one happen. Out he goes, but he's stopped by the Hextech Ultimatum. Kill picked up by G2.
And now Flash Wolves, they're looking for a dive up towards the top side of the map. At the very least, they want to be able to trade towers, but it is G2 that will secure first tower blood. They'll give all the gold over to Wunder, and it is now 3 kills to 2 in favor of G2. Jankos showing up much more than he did against PVB.
I want to see a police officer Camille skin now where the edges of Hextech Ultimatum are spike strips for the road. Because Sion tried to get away there, and they just completely popped his wheels. No way out of that one. It's kill number 3 for G2. Flash Wolves will get themselves a turret to equalize that count there in the top side, but they're still down 3,000 gold, and the mid game is going G2's way.
And note that the Rift Herald didn't go to either side as well. Even though G2 spent all these resources down towards the bottom side of the map, the best that Flash Wolves could get was just a trade in towers. And this was just more than enough damage between the two. The true damage combined with the amount of lockdown. Unfortunately, Jankos tried to flash in front to get in the way, but then he wasn't in time, so Wunder had to flash, use the ulti as well, but they do find that kill now. The problem is the kill went onto Jankos, and ideally you want it onto your Camille, but still, Duskblade has now been picked up. The upgraded Titanic Hydra is working its way for Wunder. Things are going in favor of G2 right now with a 3,500 gold lead. They need to keep this pressure up because, again, you're kind of looking at that ticking time bomb, that 5v5 comp from the Flash Wolves. If they ever find that fight, things could look very dire for G2.
At the same time, if G2 can keep this up and Flash Wolves have to contend with a 1-3-1 with a very strong Camille and Akali on the side lanes and a Nocturne always lurking to make those fights unfair, they could quickly find themselves in a situation that they are not equipped to handle as well. It's a very volatile point in time.
It's still
for both teams. Exactly. Yes, sir. And that's what makes it so fun to watch, is these moments could be very pivotal here. Any big play coming out from either side could determine the tempo of things for a good ways to come. As Jankos hangs out in the mid lane here just in case Flash Wolves try something. Ready with the paranoia. Stopwatch is broken now, so won't be able to use that one to get himself out of trouble. Tier 1 turret still under siege there by the Flash Wolves.
Look at the collapse coming in from Wunder. Hanabi is also here, but all 5 members of Flash Wolves, they noted that Wunder was pushing in bot, PerkZ was pushing in top, no teleport on the Akali either. Flash Wolves felt that considering how beefy our frontline is, we could even run the risk of diving this G2 duo, and that can convert into a tower as well. So I think G2 will probably have to concede this. But for now, they're holding on.
More damage coming out from Betty, who does get rooted up there. They saw PerkZ leave the top side, so they wanted to back up there, be prepared for that one. Meanwhile, Wunder just continues putting the damage into this bottom lane tier 2. PerkZ will do the same into the top lane tier 1. And that is going to be the second turret falling now. G2 money in their pockets for that one.
Yeah, here's the 1-3-1 coming out from G2. They have a strong enough early lead that they are threatening in a side lane. Flash Wolves trying their best to just group up and siege, and G2, they're not taking the bait. They're not getting baited into this fight, and while the Dragon will be up, G2 will likely have to concede it. It will allow them to go back to base, spend more of their gold. But it's still a very tense game between the two teams. 5,000 gold is the gold advantage for G2 right now. A lot of that is coming off the back of the Kleptomancy, but also the tower advantage, the kill advantage, the CS advantage. G2 looking good so far in this early game.
Steric's gauge for Camille means that when she goes in, she's not nearly as worried about getting immediately blown up either. Adds extra kick to the damage as well as providing the shield. Fantastic item for the champion overall. As Wunder's going to look to make yet another play onto Hanabi, who can't get himself out. It's ult for ult once more. And what is a party without some guests? Vedius, G2 bring all the boys down into the bottom lane. But the follow-up will not be there from Flash Wolves, and that's another freebie going the way of the boys from Europe.
And you said it, Captain Flowers. 1v1 is not a 1v1. Jankos lurking in the shadows. Your deepest, darkest nightmare is ready to surface the moment you overstep ever so slightly. And Hanabi wasn't even that overextended. He was just kind of walking towards the minion wave, but the long range from Wunder's E, combined with the high mobility of the Akali, combined with the intense range of a Nocturne's ultimate, mean that G2 find a pick. Maple can't ulti in to save him. The rest of the team try to do what they can, but Flash Wolves, their map is being split apart, and G2 are playing this 1-3-1 excellently.
And we said that Jankos didn't have a great game. The last time that G2 played, he was the one who really had some bad moments. He got first blooded. G2 lost control of that game very early. Only part of 40% of the team's overall kills, but this time around, 100% kill participation. No deaths so far. Right place, right time. Jankos seems to have found his element here again.
And I'm glad that he was able to brush that initial loss off. He is the kind of player that he takes a lot of responsibility on himself. He is the kind of guy that will feel that he's let the team down and will want to make up for it. And that loss could have affected him, but in today's game, he's looking good. Now, just because Flash Wolves are being divided up doesn't mean that the game is all over for them yet. We talked about it. Their 5v5 is still exceptionally strong. They just need to get into a position to force something like the Baron, force a tower, just force that 5v5 where they can take advantage of their meatball composition that they do have, all this beef that they have available to them to protect Betty, to allow him to just shred through all the carries on G2 is what they want to make happen.
I think G2 is going vegetarian this game, Vedius, because they don't want anything to do with those meatballs. They're keeping everybody separated, doing a great job in the split push game so far. Betty in the mid lane continuing to just try to apply some pressure, but G2 doesn't seem fazed by it. They're hanging on. They've still got that tier 1 turret standing despite how much we've seen Flash Wolves hanging around this part of the map.
Yeah, and now the gold lead is extended to 6,000. Wunder secures another tower in the top lane. He's extended his farm advantage to 80 right now in the 1v1. And while Flash Wolves started off strong, they found 2 early kills. They'll get themselves another tower. This gold lead is kind of snowballing out of control, and you then have to ask the question, at what point is G2's gold lead big enough that they could just straight up win the 5v5?
Right.
You know, like, if you have a full item over your opponent, regardless of your composition, we will kill you, right? And your Akali, like, sure, typically she's not great against the front line, but if she gets herself a Death Cap or a Spellbinder, are you really going to have enough resistances to mitigate that burst? Can you really stop the 4th crit of the Jhin once he gets his Infinity Edge? These are the kind of questions the Flash Wolves have to be asking themselves as we progress later into this game.
And look at the defensive options coming out from G2. I already mentioned the Sterix on the Camille. BF Sword in the inventory of Jankos tells me he's going for a Guardian Angel, so he can go in, turn himself into that dive bomb, come back to life afterwards. Stopwatch still ready to go in the inventory of perks. There's so many ways for these guys to go in and still get back out if that one big fight does happen. And then if you win that fight thanks to those, all of a sudden, okay, you can complete the Hourglass for perks. You can get that Guardian Angel all the way done on the side of Jankos, and Flash Wolves have to be very careful, Vedius. 6,000 gold down now. One big mistake could spell disaster.
But one big team fight could swing this game heavily in their favor. And look, they are now the ones with control over Baron. They are able to get to mid lane first. And this is where we get to see a kind of repeat of a Freak of Freaks versus G2 when Wunder was sitting off on a side lane. He was forcing a Freaker to make a decision, and now Flash Wolves are in that same spot. Do they commit to the Baron, try and force Wunder to TP in, or do they try and turn and fight and kill the rest of G2 before Wunder can clear out the base of the Flash Wolves?
Wunder sieging up in that bottom side yet again. 3 items completed for Hjärnan. Has the Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire, and the Storm Razor over on the side of Betty. It's 2 completed big items and what I'll call a bougie garage sale Control Ward, Hex Drinker, BF Sword. None of those items are little cheapies, but at the same time, they're not completed.
Now, the thing is, the gold between the two AD carries is pretty much identical outside of 200 or so, and Betty decided to go for the defensive option rather than just finishing off his Infinity Edge, and you have to bring into question why he did that. He is showing too much respect, I believe, to PerkZ, and he believes that PerkZ's ability to get onto the backline and potentially execute him is so strong that he has to build this Hex Drinker. But you look at this front line that he has around him, you look at the team that's been built to protect him, and you have to bring into question, like, why doesn't he just trust them to protect him while he is then the damage dealer for the squad?
Hjärnan in some trouble here, maybe. Gets himself away. Flash out from Wadid to stay safe there as well. So Flash Wolves grab themselves a summoner spell from the side of G2. But the question is, what do you make of that? You've now got 5 minutes where Wadid has no flash. The Kench can be punished. Hanabi coming back into that bottom lane. But look at the damage from Wunder. This is Trinity Force Camille. She does so much work to the turret. It's not even a concern. It's already taken down to about 10%.
And he's just proxying the farm in the base. He is making fun of this Flash Wolves roster. So many members are trying to collapse. G2 started the Baron. Wunder doing split push things once again.
Wunder, I already talked about this guy doing so much work for G2 so far at Worlds, and he's doing it here again, Vedius. Tier 3 turret falls in the bottom lane as G2 are really making life hard for this so far undefeated Flash Wolves. Hanabi about to fall in the 1v1, saved by his mid laner, but that's a big resource down in the Galio ultimate.
And you want to like give props to Wunder, but this is such a beautiful team effort because the coordination from G2, the restraint, the patience is what's so vital here to allow Wunder to do this. They started the Baron. If they didn't start that, he could not have committed to the base as much as he had. They then disengaged the moment they saw Moojin on the map. The moment he was behind that Baron pit, G2 disengaged. Why? Because then they know Flash Wolves is all there to contest, and that means that Wunder's left in the 1 versus 1. Flash Wolves getting dragged left, right, and that is how you need to play this 1-3-1. Don't get baited into the fight so that you can utilize your split pushes. And Flowers, again, the goal lead is now 7,000. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Look at how well G2 is doing this. Go back to what I said earlier. You win League of Legends by either making the big play or not doing something stupid. And G2 have avoided putting themselves in a spot where they're playing Flash Wolves game. They aren't allowing Flash Wolves to make them make a bad decision. And now Flash Wolves are daring to change that. They're saying we cannot sit back any longer. We must force a big fight, and we will force it here in the Baron pit. Hanabi on the front line, Betty and the rest of the Flash Wolves taking the Baron down now to about 1/3 HP. Hanabi still trying to run interference. Jankos wants to go in. If he steals this away, it's going to be massive. Red team has slain Baron Nashor, secured by the Flash Wolves, but at what cost? Wunder's taking down the base. He's on to Nexus turret number 2. He's got the cannon minions. G2 just needs to stop the backs. Hanabi's made it back into the base, but Wunder flashes to the side. He'll be controlled, but never killed. And G2 find their win.
Wunder with the back door for G2 eSports. They do not care about the Baron. The split push proves successful. G2, 2-1 in the group.
Betty and Meatballs weren't enough to do it today, Betty, as G2 will find that second win. They will hand the Flash Wolves their first loss, and they will feel good ending the first round robin of groups this way.
And while the ultimate play came down to Wunder, while the victory was in his hands, that was a team effort across the board. Jankos finding those ganks on the Nocturne. The team playing so patiently around the Baron. The bot lane surviving after so much was thrown towards trying to shut them down.
And honestly, when G2 took down the Afrika Freaks on day 1, I said, man, these guys got some macro. They're making things happen. The decision-making and the coordination, the communication among the team seemed on point. Today, it was the same story again. When all the players on G2 come into the game with the plan, and everybody sticks to it, they can make some amazing things happen.
And this is the thing when you talk about inconsistency with G2, because you honestly don't know what G2 is going to show up on the day. Will it be the Jankos that gives away all the early kills, all the first bloods, or will it be the guy that sets up his laners to be those carries? Flash Wolves, they played towards their strengths. They were scaling. They were waiting to get to that team fight point. But unfortunately for them, they could never find that 5v5 that could have swung the game, and they just got out-split pushed in the very end.
It was an awesome coordination from G2. At some points, looked like one guy controlling 5 different champions. But for more on how they made that huge split push victory happen, let's hear it from the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. G2 with the split push victory off of Wunder's Camille, MasterCard Player of the Game performance. Let's take one more look at those final moments. It seemed like Flash Wolves really kind of got run around the map until they got to this point where G2 could easily execute on the split push victory.
Yeah, I was really looking for this play to happen a couple minutes earlier. When you're starting to do it now, you've already lost your inhibitor, so there's so much less for Wunder to have to work through, and the rest of G2 do a great job kind of confusing them. They turn the lights out. You see that Gragas barrel go out in the middle of nowhere because they have no clue what's happening. If Flash Wolves want to try and turn and win the game or something, maybe they can do that. Use to disengage here, but it's too little too late as they're not going to be able to get back to Wunder.
Yeah, I mean, my only problem with this Flash Wolves play is how late in the game it was, right? As Mark said, once the inhibitors and everything is already down, it's very hard to do that because they can just kind of look to close out the game. Wunder goes straight for the next, is able to get it, but you saw G2 had no real answer to that, right? Like, it's just try to keep the split push going. If the inhibitor turret is still up and you get Baron, then all of a sudden, like, you're able to actually, force G2 to group and fight, and maybe they don't have an answer to that. G2, even from a very heavy advantage, decided to commit to the split push, which makes me feel like they didn't think they really had much going on in the 5v5, but it was a really nice game from G2. They did a really good job just playing to their win condition.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, Flash was 100% should have tried to force that Baron earlier. I think they had a couple different issues. Betty's itemization going very defensive on the Xayah when he's the only guy who's doing the damage. So gotta knock him down some tiers there. But ultimately, I don't think that Flash Wolves ever had an opportunity to go earlier for the Baron simply because G2 were constantly pressuring all sorts of lanes. This is probably the most coordinated I've ever seen this team attack the map. And there was never kind of that breathing room where Flash Wolves got all 5 members back at the same time, particularly because Hanabi was getting picked off repeatedly in this 1-3-1 with the swing composition.
I want to talk about the draft here because I know there are some strong opinions on the desk about how the chips fell for either team. Mark, I want to start with you. Are you satisfied with the direction that G2 went? And same question for Flash Wolves, of course.
I don't think that this should have worked as well as it did, is what I'd say. Painful for Frost. But I think it's the kind of thing where this can work if you're going to hard commit to a split push, but it then puts the onus on the other team to kind of make you come to them. And I don't think Flash Wolves did anything to make that happen. And I understand it is more difficult than people give it credit for because, like she's saying, they're always splitting you up. But, like, you could have sometimes Sion ulted down a lane or something, but when you actually have the Camille reset and you have that brief moment to try and find a play or something like that, you never saw anything, and you put your best player on the Braum, which is not very common in the meta right now. It's not very effective for starting team fights, and while it is great into G2's comp, SwordArt is kind of kneecapped in his ability to make things happen for his team.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really interesting because, G2, we talked about, like, earlier, kind of playing to your strengths. And, hey, if your top laner is your strength, then put the game in his hands, hard commit to the 1-3-1. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think Flash Wolves, obviously, they could have tried to rush the Baron earlier, but as you say, the setup perhaps wasn't there, and that becomes difficult. But I don't think, that's not the only way for them to win, whereas G2 hard committing split push felt like the only way for them to win. And I thought Flash Wolves did a poor job, of actually responding to those constant attacks on their Sion. You never had Gragas kind of trailing the Sion, waiting for a potential gank coming in. You never had Galio in place to actually respond very early on to that either. And if you're able to shut down Wunder a little bit more, perhaps the game looks very differently, because I think that G2 had narrow win conditions, but it did play to their strengths and they executed well.
And that's the key thing for me. I totally understand what you guys are saying. Like, in a perfect box, there's this different way that it can pull out, and you just pull that Doctor Strange moment out, and you find that perfect way to play the game. But for me, this is the only type of composition I want to see G2 run. If you're an EULCS fan, if you're a G2 fan, this is what you want to get behind. Their ability to play cross-map, to play behind their high-level carries potential when PerkZ is on an assassin, when Wunder gets something like his Camille. I don't think anything else is acceptable because they don't team fight as well as the other EULCS teams, and they certainly don't team fight as well as the other stacked Worlds teams at this tournament. So keep doing this. It works. They took a gamble. They said Flash was won a 5v5. Let's never fight them. Let's run them around the map, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah, I think you can definitely tip your cap to G2 for knowing who they are at this point. Like, I don't think, like, the playing stage probably gave them that extra time to find it out, but they understand, like, we are the split push team, we are the get Wunder ahead team. Sometimes we can team fight if it looks like the right comp, but we'll also not, like, tunnel on that, and they deserve a ton of credit for that. Looking at Flash Worlds, you can make the same argument for why you can kind of be like, well, why didn't you give SwordArt a playmaker? You know, there were only 2 support bans, Rakan and Alistar, and the TK takeaway. There's a large portion of the pool still up.
Well, now some questions should be raised because this was a group that was starting to feel a little bit determined, at least in terms of who would be the 1 seed coming out, as Flash Wolves looked so dominant in their first 2 games, moving to 2-0. G2 is now tied with them at 2-1. So the 2 of those teams tied at the top of the table makes for a very interesting final day for this group.
But the scary thing is if this strategy will work against PvB as well as Afrika as they kind of return to form. We already saw G2 fall down to PvP, so maybe they get their next shot, but that's about Zeros and that's about Keen. You know, these teams who should be able to compete with the 1-3-1 because they don't have an underperforming top laner like Hanabi did in this game. So
is Hanabi the weakest, top laner in this group?
I mean, I frankly think that was the number one reason why they couldn't do the Baron is because the Sion was always dead. If that Sion's not dead, then maybe Flash Wolves have the space where they can force the Baron and force G2 in the 5v5, but because he's constantly in gray screen, there was never that breathing moment.
I love it. All right, well, G2 Esports pick up a wonderful win for themselves here. Before we go on to our next match, let's hand it over to Shox for more on that G2 victory.
Thank you very much, guys. I am here with Wadid after a really crazy ending. So can you start by telling me about the split push and about the whole ending of that game?
I personally thought it was kind of easy game for us because we knew that, like, what is our job and then what is our composition in the map, and we kind of practiced the backdoor as well. So we did sometimes in scrims as well, like we were talking about, do we do this on stage as well? And then it happened, you know, so yeah.
But that's still pretty hard to execute. They had a composition where they have Betty all protected by a lot of tanks. So what was the game plan to make sure that you could pull off the split push and the backdoor?
We knew that they really want to play on Betty because he's kind of star player in the team, you know, and he's really good on his like damage dealing as well. So we just thought that if we have our comfort champion and then our combo, then we can just play on team, right? Like, it's not about only one player. If we just know that what we should do on the map, then it doesn't matter who has who on that team. So we just played on our just team image, and then we were G2, so yeah.
Then you were G2, and you know, I have to ask about the loss that you guys suffered the other day, and it seems to me that the inconsistency you guys had in the season is not completely gone yet. So how do you manage to approach that and to tackle that to make sure you get out of the group?
Like, apparently we are playing a lot of scrims, so compared to being in Europe, is a lot of difference between like screen time in here because we are even screaming after today's game as well, you know. So we are playing a lot of games. So I think scrims will help us like being in constant. So I think we will be way more confident and then consistent in coming up games. Yeah.
Okay, well, I know for you it is very, very important to be playing here. This is your hometown, and as a player who lives so far away from his family, what has it been like for you being to show your family what you got on the stage here?
Yeah, it's quite sad that my family cannot come to my work zone because I'm playing in Europe, right? But it's worse and biggest tournament you can have, and then you are here to play, you know. I'm so proud of myself, and the family also proud of me, and we're just so happy. And then like my inside, like I feel so comfort inside, so I can more focus on my practice and on stage as well. Like I can see my family is there, like I can no matter what, I can find my family in there, and then I cannot like, ooh, my family, but
Yeah, you can.
I mean, it's like hard to focus, you know, but still like I can like feel it, you know, so it feels really, really good.
Well, that is wonderful to hear, and I see it's been helping today as well. Thank you so much for talking to me, Wadid. The second victory for G2 Esports. We are going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because IG versus 100 Thieves is up next. Stick around.